I'm Debbie Iona, representing the League of Women Voters of Portland. The League shares the aspiration stated in the resolution that, quote, meaningful public engagement involves the ability of community members to affect policies, practices, and PPB culture, thereby improving outcomes and eliminating unconstitutional actions, end quote. We believe, however, that the Bureau could be doing more to connect to the public through its communication practices. The League has already shared with the DOJ, PPB staff, and the PCCEP our concerns about the methods the Bureau uses to inform the public. We believe there is room for improvement in the PPB's communications about important policy considerations, events, and opportunities for participation. As an example, when the annual report was scheduled for precinct presentations, a good place to start would have been reaching out through the email lists for the many PPP facilitated and participatory advisory committees listed in Appendix A. Connecting with these groups might have drawn a larger audience. After all, the annual report is meant to provide an overview of the Bureau's accomplishments and challenges, so it should be of interest to community members already associated with these advisory groups. The PPB also should consider adopting some of the techniques used by other city bureaus. Many provide sign-up sheets at community meetings where they gather contact information for future notifications. In addition, there are links on project websites where the public can sign up to receive information. When we shared our disappointment about the lack of notification for the precinct meetings, Bureau staff responded that the information was on the website and recommended signing up for the media alert system. The alert system requires creation of a password, a barrier for some. Furthermore, we understand that the alerts include media notices about criminal activity and are not necessarily devoted to the types of policy issues that interest members of the public who might want to provide feedback. We recommend that the Bureau build email distribution lists and use them in a tailored fashion to get the word out when there are opportunities to engage in policy discussions. It should be more proactive and intentional in its communication techniques rather than relying on members of the public to come to them to find opportunities to learn and participate. And at the last PCCEP meeting, I noticed that the two staff people from the Bureau are sworn police officers who are doing this work, and I wonder if the community engagement team would benefit from having somebody who is trained in, public outreach and communications in their office. Thank you.
Great, and Debbie, if I could just respond, because I think you've given us a very clear roadmap here, some great suggestions. First of all, I want to thank you as being one of the people who does show up on a regular basis, and you do participate, and I want to thank you for that engagement. I never want to speak for the chief. Her job is hard enough without me speaking for her, but I do know that they've made substantial changes to the PIO function recently in order to better engage with the community and provide additional information. And you've offered some very, very good suggestions here with regard to being proactive, being intentional, and building on the relationships we already have in advisory groups. And so I will take the notes you've written, and if you want to give me your written testimony, I'll make sure that we get that to the PIO, because I think they're good suggestions.
Sure, well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Good afternoon.
Yes, my name is Robert West. I'm with from the police, and I hope Joanne Hardesty pays really close attention to what I have to say. This thing about the gun violence reduction team that I keep hearing about is actually Gang Squad. I see them going out every night and pulling over people of color, searching their cars. There was a shooting in Southeast Portland on like 50th where it was a white shooting a white. There was no gun violence reduction team. The only detectives that showed up was people from the robbery division. And I still find the gun violence reduction team / gang squads still patrolling the same areas that they do when they're looking for gang members. I asked the one of the officers, what's the difference between your job now and then? He goes, just the name. They switched it just because of the name. They're doing the same thing out there as they've been doing. And it's pretty sad when they sit there and they switch the name so that they can get people to sit there and say, hey, we got this nice new name, now will you support us? And it makes me mad when I sit there and I see a car pulled over and they want to search it because it's blacks. And then, I see cops pull over a white vehicle, and it's like, well, you're speeding, you got your driver's license, go back to the car, run the name, go back, give them their driver's license, and send them on their way. I've seen several times where they've sat there and said, we want to search for weapons. That's typically amongst the blacks and the Hispanics. You don't see that with the Brew. I've very seldom seen the Brew or EK that were stopped where their vehicles were searched. And gang task force doesn't even usually show up on those. But like I said, in Southeast Portland, a white guy shot a white guy in a robbery, and there's no gun violence reduction team that showed up. And that literally shocked me because, one of the detectives told me that they show up on everything, and they're not. They're showing up in areas of color. So that's what I wanted to bring up.
Last person who signed up is Charles Bertrand Johnson.
Good afternoon, thanks y'all. And especially thanks to Clerk Carla or whoever, Chief Outlaw and her staff who made this PDF look great even on the tiny screen of my phone. So it was good to hear that we've grown, that we respect the public enough to do a 20-some page PDF instead of, as was previously cited in the earlier testimony, an 8-page thing that seemed a little bit hackneyed to some people. This is important work, and one of the ways we know that it's important work is because one of the people that was killed by Portland police, Quantas Moose-Hayes, has a family member here. I'd like to thank her for her diligence in working with the community and, for lack of a better phrase, working with the police department towards improvement and better accountability, and especially the prevention of violence and death from the hands of people trained to protect and serve us. One thing that would be interesting, it's not necessarily the role of the police, maybe some of the organizations, whether it's League of Women Voters or Copwatch, that maintain records about those people who have been killed by police, is to have the timeline, because I don't even recall if Chief Outlaw came in before or after any particular shootings, say the Quantas Moose-Hayes shootings or others. So as we sit here in a city that may be going on its third or fourth one-time white borough mayor. We've had a single-term mayor with Sam Adams. We had a single-term mayor with Charlie Hales. Depending on what people believe about the ability of this town to have the police preferably live in this town and also live up to the community values, may determine whether we finally get a 2-term mayor after however long it's been since we had one before. I especially appreciate Chief Outlaw's candor and directness in acknowledging that 6 of our neighbors died from shots fired by police. I'll have to talk with Mr. Handelman more about the other type of death in custody. I don't have the Copwatch experience that Mr. West has to talk fully about his situation, but when I think about a Metro Guns task force, the first thing that comes to mind is that in this metro area, we had guns on the roof of a parking garage that were going to be aimed at me, and I don't know if any police officer identified and recorded the serial number of those guns, tracked their trafficking, knows if they were involved in other crimes. There was certainly probable cause to do so, to at least record the identity of those weapons, if not seize them. I hope that when we look at equity and racial considerations, we'll know how many guns were seized and tracked from people of color versus how many were seized and tracked from people that were not people of color. Thank you very much. I'm sorry my time's expired. PIO, milkshake, really? The PIO and the milkshake, there's definitely room for improvement there. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chief. Did you have any other closing thoughts? Very good. I'll entertain a motion on the report.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hardesty, a second by Commissioner Fritz. Please, this is accepting the 2018 annual report of the Portland Police Bureau, item number 943. Please call the roll.
Fritz,
It's really great to get the report. I like its new format. It's very clear, and I particularly appreciate the reference in the report to my 2019 report coming fairly shortly. So I know that your intent is to get them back onto an annual basis in a timely manner. Thank you very much. Thank you for the comments. Bye.
Hardesty.
I also want to add my thanks to the chief and her staff for actually developing a report that gives us an opportunity to really get a insight into the work and the day-to-day operations of Portland Police Bureau. I couldn't help but look at the annual report and have that open while I was reading the auditor's report about police overtime. And so as I look at both the gang violence, because the auditor's report is actually tracking gang violence that is being that Portland Police Bureau is responding to, and so I look at the over 50,000 in overtime that was spent around cases involving quote unquote gang violence, and I also have to acknowledge the fact that if 58% of the arrests are of people who are houseless, we really need to change our priorities as far as the police force and actually focus on solving crime and actually not make people criminals who are suffering because they can't afford to live in our city. And so I vote aye, and I look forward to working with the chief to make this report better and to have it really reflect what's happening on the ground in our community.
Wheeler.
Well, I want to thank everybody in the Police Bureau who was responsible for collecting this data, for presenting it in a way that I think is fairly easy for people to digest. Again, this is a baseline. It will continue to improve with time. And if there's one disappointing thing, Chief, is that you have to start somewhere. And so we don't have a lot of longitudinal data, particularly for areas where we're starting to collect data in a different way, or in some cases maybe collecting data for the first time. And this certainly came out in the response from the Police Bureau to the overtime audit, that we have actually engaged and started to do many of the data collection procedures that were actually identified as potential strategies in the audit. And so I want to applaud you and your command staff for being data-driven, and with time, what we will have is longitudinal data. We'll be able to determine whether or not the investments we're making, the strategies we're pursuing are actually the best and highest use to deliver the resources, both dollars and cents and human resources that we have. And we'll see what results we are getting with those dollars. And so I appreciate your efforts there. I vote aye. The report's adopted. Next item is the resolution 944 for the community engagement plan. Please call the roll.
So Mayor Wheeler alluded